So for this setting screen, I needed to be in my own build of the game. So here you can see that the resolution changing does work. It will change the resolution on the fly. It's pretty easy to do. As well, change the quality to very low, and you'll see in the background the lighting just goes away immediately. And change it back to high, and it goes back to what it was. So for full screen, it'll immediately go to full screen if you ask it to. For the audio, if you listen, it gets so much louder, and then you can make it nothing. And you can do that to the music and the sounds as well. So let's change this down here. Change the audio up way higher. So now this is going to be very loud. Yeah, that's way too loud. But it works. And of course you can exit just by clicking anywhere. Anywhere outside the screen or by the exit button. So for the code of the options menu, all it does is it takes in a bunch of data, which is the data that is actually going to set the data in the player prefs. So this is the UI for the drop-down resolution thing selector, and this is the drop-down selector for quality. This is the toggle for full screen. These are the sliders for the volume. And this is the exit button and the background capture. That way this can just, this detects whether or not they're clicking the background. That way it can just exit out the screen, right? So you can just see a bunch of like player pref stuff, setting the volume and the sliders to the player prefs, which is arguably just the best way of doing it, because if you don't have it set to the player prefs, it would just be in a random position every time. Well, not random, it would probably be defaulted to 0, let's be real, but maybe you don't want it to be 0 all the time, but whatever. So this is how we get the resolutions. We just go into the screen resolutions, make it a list, loop over all of them, then add it to the, we take the height and the width, and then we put it into a format string, and then we add that to the resolutions, right? And then of course we reverse this because the smallest resolution is first, and we don't want that, so we flip them around. Of course, then you add all the options, and then so we set the currently selected resolution to the resolution in the list, right? So this is how that's done. It's just a simple for each loop. I don't actually know what this type of function is called. Looping function, iteration function. I don't remember or recall. It's link, so I guess it's fast. Same thing for the quality settings. Just get all the qualities, reverse them, add them to the list. We're doing these new processing like we did up here with the resolutions, and then of course set the quality to what's in there. Probably could have abstracted this out to a function. That may have made it slightly easier, but whatever. And of course here we're setting the slider positions, and then we're setting the audio mixer to what the player pref is. That way it automatically updates, the sound. Here's where we're at the listeners. Super simple stuff. Just set resolution, quality, full screen, and then set the volume, which we'll actually go over first because it's the easiest. So here you can see I have a bunch of functions just abstracted down to a single function that passes in the group name, which is, the name of the group that is actually having its volume set. And then, just do this. Yeah. See, if I hadn't done this, this would just be done over multiple different times. And of course, after this, you want to set the player preferences, so you do that, and it's super simple. It's an extra function call, but whatever, You could probably inline this if you really wanted to. If that's the thing in C#, I know it's in C++ and C, but I don't know about C#. Yeah, whatever. So for the resolution, all you do is take this util function, which is, simple utilities. So all it does is it parses out the string by splitting it, check if its length is above 2, and if it is, it errors out and then returns. That way nothing gets parsed. Then we try to parse this string into an integer, and if we can't, do all this stuff. But if we can, set the resolution, and then set the resolution in the player prefs to what we already have. And the quality is pretty similar. It's also in the utilities function. You just take the names, put it into a list, get the index of the current quality, right? And then if quality is -1, which means that that quality is not in the list, error out. But if it is, set the quality level, right? And this is abstracted out into a static utilities class because I wanted to use this in the initialization function for the game. That way, all the player preferences get applied at the very beginning of the game. And of course, set full screen. Set full screen to be whatever the full screen boolean is. And then set it in, the player preferences. And then the last one here is the exit options, which is just to destroy this game object, which, actually exits this object or the option screen. So to make an audio mixer, all you do is come down here, create a new object, and choose audio mixer. Since I already have one, I don't need to go over it. All I did was come down here and then make a new, group whenever I needed separate audio things. So here I use music, and here I use sound, and these are all subgroups of master, which, once this changes, all these change their output as well. So there's that. So the way to actually access this is just by taking in the audio mixer itself as an object, or an audio mixer rather. So you come here and you expose the parameters of the individual groups here, right? So here you can see that volume, you want to expose it by left-clicking, or that's right-clicking rather, and hit expose, and then it'll come down here and it'll say my exposed variable or something like that. We want to rename it to something that's more identifiable. I renamed mine to master volume, music volume, and sound volume, because that's easy to know and easy to type in. And then what you want to do is once you have your reference to the audio mixer, you want to come down here and say set the float, if you want to set the audio volume. And that's what I'm doing here for the master volume, just to initialize the audio to what the player preferences are, which are actually retrieved up here, right? So I actually have this hooked up to a bunch of little sliders here. Let me quickly show you how I actually do it. So here. So I didn't want to map 0 and 1 to a range of decibel values, because I just thought that would just be way too much for what I can do in a couple of days. So what I did was I set the min value of -40, which just, was left here, and then 20 to the right. So 0 decibels is right here, which is just about normal level. So that's how I modify the volumes of each individual group. So for the triggered audio, I'm using two different types of triggered audio, 2D audio and 3D audio. However, I use triggered 2D audio for the buttons here. You can hear it, hopefully. If we come in here, I use 3D audio for the bullets. Here, let me actually change the audio so there you can actually hear the bullets. Not the greatest, but it works. So the way I do this is by taking, by going into each shooter and then playing the audio source that is attached to the player model, or not the player model, the gun. Let's actually show that real quick. It's actually attached to the projectile, which then has an audio on it, which is, this is the particle. Here it is, single shot AK-47. And of course, it uses 3D sound by, the spatial blend. So that means, if a enemy is farther away from you and it's shooting at you, it's going to sound farther away from you. But yeah, that is how that works. And the way I do the audio in the options is by having a sound system or a sound source, audio source, right here. And then on click down in the say full screen here, right? If we come down here to the button, whenever it is clicked, it just plays the sound, which is effectively doing the same thing in code. It's just doing it through a Unity event. So for 3D audio, what I do is pretty similar. All I have is a sound source down here that plays day ambience right here, and of course play on wake and it loops. And then down here, instead of playing in 3D, we play in 2D because we want the player to hear it absolutely everywhere. So this is just one sample of it. I'll come down here into my level 1 scene, and oh god, where is it? Oh no, where is it? There it is. Okay. So yeah, it's also right here. Plays just cricket sounds, and of course it is also in 2D. You can hear it absolutely everywhere. And because there is no code attached to this, I think it's super simplistic system. So for the particle effect, I have the muzzle flash. So here, if you check the game here, we're just going to shoot, and you can see that the muzzle flash is just there. Not the greatest looking, but it works for the style of the game, And of course, I should have let one of them hit me. That way you can see that they're instantiating muzzle flashes too. Yep, there it is. Let's actually go into the prefab where those are located, I believe on the base AK. So yeah, here's the particle system that actually gets played. Of course, it doesn't loop because you don't want your muzzle flash to loop. You're not going to be constantly firing, the weapon. So it would just make no sense, right? So you can see here that there were a couple things changed. The lifetime was changed. The start speed was changed. That way, it actually looks like the proper muzzle flash. Sort of, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen muzzle flashes with streaks of light like this, but it looks okay. Not a whole lot was changed, honestly, other than color. I also added trails. That way it looked, decent and didn't just like spray out a bunch of particle looking things, which, I mean, I guess that's sort of what this is used for, but yeah, not a whole lot changed, honestly. And if we come over here to the code editor, you can see here that the shooter just plays the particles system. So for the reflection probes, I have a bunch of them in my scene. I have actually about 9 of them. This is just so I can get, a decent, view of the area that should be a thing. So if we actually go into the game here, actually, I don't even know if we need to. Let me stop that real quick. So, I believe you can just go down here and just zoom in on these things. And yeah, they show you the environment from the cube map that it generates. So yeah, they're in there. They work well. So the reason I have 9 of them in game is because, each area you can walk on, right? Except for like outside the bounds, of course, you can't go out there. But the enemies will drop metallic balls that you can pick up for, health and, damaging pickups, right? So because you can go anywhere, you would want a good blend of, the cube maps that are there. And of course, if there's only sparsely placed cube maps everywhere, you're not going to have a good, uh, good looking metallic ball. So you need to have just about as this many. I imagine you can probably get away with it with less if they were less detailed, but I have a lot of detail in here, so that is the reason that I have so many of these things in here. So for the game running in 60 FPS, this is going to be a bit of a challenge to deal with because my laptop is very underpowered. But I can quickly show off that it does run a good FPS. It's not 60, but if I come here, and of course you can see it's dipping into the, very low. Here we go. Let's change the quality down to very low. And hopefully that helps out just a bit. The problem is that I have OBS running, and OBS likes to tank the FPS. So let's come down here, change the settings to very low. Let's not full screen this. Come down here and change the resolution because that's going to change exactly what's going on here. Of course, we're getting a higher FPS, but not great because, OBS is still terrible. Let's go even lower. See about that. 640 by 480, and of course, hollow mirrors for whatever reason. 30 FPS. That's still not the greatest. Let's just try to start it. See what we got here. 30 FPS. Again, this isn't the fault of the game. This is the fault of my hardware and OBS just not being good. So, it's unfortunate, but I hope that doesn't, ruin my chances of getting a decent grade on that part. As for the game being available, it is freely available on my itch.io. I do believe you need the link to it, so I will be leaving the link to the game in the not only the description of this video, but the file as well. So there's that. And of course, if you want to run it on Linux, if you have a Linux machine, go for it. But there's a Windows build available too.